And good morning, everyone, and welcome to Office Hours. Welcome to our longtime participants and also to any new viewers we might have today. Today, daily host Alex Lindsay is still on vacation. I'm Bill Davis, and I'm going to be co-hosting for the rest of the day. Most of you know he started this more than a year ago, and we've been gathering here every single day on Zoom, where for 2 hours or so, we talk about all things media, technology, and production. Basically, the panelists that gather here are a highly experienced brain trust of technologists and digital creators who drop by to answer your questions in a live session where you, the audience, gets to set the agenda. So here's how it works. We use a real-time question submission system called Mukana. And if it's your first time here, you can get to it in 2 short internet hops. If you're watching in YouTube now, there's a link below that will take you to the Zoom session that some of you are watching already. Once here, look in the comments area and you'll see the link to the Mukana web panel. In Mukana, you can join the live chat discussing the show. And if you explore the tabs, you'll see an area where you can post your own questions to the panel. Now, that's important, because you'll notice all the questions have votes displayed, and that's how you become the producer of the show. Because the submitted questions, maybe yours today, get voted on by everyone, and whatever gets the most votes, well, that becomes the topics that we handle first and in the most depth, starting now in the show's first hour. Now, some days we have a second hour focused on a special topic or guest. Today, a pair of our longtime panelists, Jeffrey Powers and Leo Mendel, are going to referee a Streamyard vStream death match. Well, not really a death match, but basically they're going to investigate some of the services that compete in that space and help everybody understand them. If you post questions about Streamyard, please make sure to tag them. The Streamyard tag is already in Mukana, so please use it. It really helps us organize the questions. And I think that's enough explanation for anybody. It's time we get to the real reason we're here, and that's what your votes have said you want to talk about today. And I'm doing a little bit of double duty as questioner as well. So our first one comes from Aaron Husledge, I'm sorry, Durham, North Carolina. No, it is Husledge. What are the Husledge? Sorry, Aaron. It's pronunciation weirdness day.
No problem.
What are the preferred graphics solutions that the panel uses for live productions? Who wants to give us an insight into what they're doing? I know I use, for live productions, I've used Keynote tons just because it's easy. It seems always flawless, and I'm a Mac guy. Carl Asmussen?
Yeah, so if I just get it going, let's just get the Keynote running here. So yeah, Keynote's going to be obvious. So I made this little one for Jesse's new lights. So that's the 1-pack, that's the 2-pack, and that's the 4-pack. Keynote is my answer.
I was expecting that.
Beiju.
Actually, can you go back and show those again really quick? Sorry.
Did they not get pinned? Okay, cool.
Carl, I need you to talk.
Carl, if you talk a little bit, then it'll go to your screen. It wasn't pinned there, so we missed.
So this is a little slide I made for Jesse, because he's got new lights, which he's charging at the moment, but that's cool. So this is the 1-pack from B&H. So you just get the 1 light, pretty much that's it, in the magnets and the USB charging cable. The 2-light pack comes with a lot more. So it comes with a grid, it comes with waterproof bags, and it comes with clips. So you clip them on and use them on quarter 20. They have quarter 20s on them as well. And then the 4-pack just comes with more. And with the octa spreader there up the top there, you'll see there's 8 things where you can make a rosette of lights if you wish.
That's a good example of what Keynote allows you to do. You just go live to Keynote, and then each click of your mouse sets up the next slide, and all those transitions are built in. Let's look. Tlaluk is got his hand up, and so does Beiju. Go, Tlaluk.
So I work a lot in live theater, and this past year with the pandemic, we tended to go virtual. And so what we do is we use things like Isadora or QLab, because of the need for linear cues that happen the same way every time. And so we use those to inject graphics and other things into a virtual theater production. That may not be what you're asking about, but I did want to bring that up, that there are ways to use those tools and leverage them to your advantage.
Leland.
Outside, and let me just double check my volumes here so I don't blow anybody out real quick. I had to adjust something real fast, so I apologize. typically outside of like GIMP to produce regular graphics for overlays and things of that sort, like the lower Fenwicks and such. And to avoid PowerPoint, vMix has its own graphics capabilities to an extent for certain purposes. I tend to use Beautiful.ai, which is for my presentation purposes. I can come in here and build a lot of really cool graphics for timeline construction. It's basically like a PowerPoint setup, but it's in the cloud, so I have a little more flexibility over how I can control it and how I can build it. Deep down, it's not much different than a PowerPoint, but I think it's a little more flexible, so I tend to use that a lot more, Mark.
You're coming a little hot, Leland, about 3 or 4 dB too hot. So Beiju's next. Go ahead, Beiju.
So it depends on graphics. Like if we need to make them real-time edits so quickly, normally it's a static graphic. So we often use Pro Presenter because we can just throw the graphics in it, throw a still into it, pull it quickly. If we have time and we are doing pre-rendered animated graphics, we'll often just prefer to just render out a ProRes file or and then play it out using a video playback software like MIDI, Playback Pro, any of the other options. And some of them do support key and fill, so which gives you a lot more. You can do key fill over SDI, so those work really well as well. So it just depends how much front load you can do.
Excellent. Okay, so hopefully that gave you a tour of some of the best solutions out there. Moving on to Rupert McCrae of Dallas, Texas, who says, an example of being denied production insurance was mentioned on Office Hours recently. Can the panel give other criteria examples for obtaining or being denied production insurance? Anybody want? I'll spend a little bit of time because I've held production insurance for a long time. It's probably easier to get now than it used to be. Back in the days when I was in production, there weren't very many categories that insurance brokers understood, particularly something as niche as video production insurance or some sort of set shooting. They had me under motion pictures, and it was incredibly expensive because those tend to be incredibly high dollar things. Eventually, my insurance agent found a policy that could be adapted, but I think I had to become a photographer in order to get that insurance. I mentioned that because the classification you go under has a lot to do with the rates you go under. I'm sure now that video producers, particularly independent ones, are more common, the insurance brokers and the industry probably has allowed for that, and there's probably easier ways to find insurance. But I was able to get good coverage, particularly things like insurance certificates, which are really important if you go to shoot in a large facility or any kind of a corporate environment. They'll often ask you for a named insured certificate. And if you don't have that, you can be denied permission to shoot there. So it's something that you really should take seriously, get in early, do some research, call independent insurance agents perhaps in your area and see who has links to those. And good, Aaron has a hand up. Go ahead.
I'll also add that it really matters when you're renting as well, because renting equipment, they always want to see.
That's right. They always want to see certificates of insurance. And if you have a good broker, if you have a policy and it's in place, you can call your broker and they'll fax insurance certificates of coverage instantly and take away all those issues. Go ahead, Tlalak.
Yeah, so I just wanted to be clear about the rental insurance. Oftentimes you don't actually have to have a production insurance. I think that production insurance means that if there's a problem with the production, you will get paid out for that production. And that is not the kind of insurance that many of the companies I work for would ever get because of the levels of money that we work in. And so what I have to do is actually go to their liability insurance broker and get a rental insurance certificate out of that in case something happens to a big, expensive piece of equipment.
Yeah, I will say in my experience, having a good agent that you have a relationship with can really help with these things because there's all sorts of kinds of insurance. Production insurance, for example, if something goes wrong and you can't shoot, or the liability on set, they can get into really specific little areas, and you want somebody who kind of knows the landscape and understands how that all works. So hopefully we give you some. Oh, Leland, do you have a thought before we take off to the next topic?
Just a thought. That's a lot of times why people sign releases is so that insurance doesn't get involved for that fact. We see that a lot on some of the smaller events for marketers and things like that. They'll go on site and have to sign a release so that they're capable or they're responsible for their own liabilities. If their equipment breaks while they're on site, they're just going to have to deal with it.
Yeah. There's just a lot to that subject. So I would, like with the legal sides of this, instead of trying to figure it out yourself, I'd try to find a professional who can help guide you through the thicket. It's pretty dense. Let's move on. Let's move on to the next Rupert McCrae has a question from Dallas, Texas. And he says, so what are people's thoughts on Zoom Rooms NDI following yesterday's show? And now that we've had time to digest all the new information, has anybody had time to digest all the new information? Aaron, go ahead.
I think it's a good first pass. I don't think it's going to solve a lot of problems for everybody, but it's good that they have recognized the need and have kind of corporate focus on it to some degree or another. I know they've grown ridiculously fast, and that's caused them a lot of, ups and downs with regard to feature sets that they're trying to produce. So, I think it's good. I think they have a long way to go. And I think that it's the way they're doing it is ridiculously CPU heavy, which, those are choices.
Beiju.
Yeah, having thought about it a little bit, looking at the post in Discord, like I believe Greg Gibson has actually used it in a production, and he was pretty positive about it. What's probably the biggest takeaway from this, at least to me, is that they actually have ISO audio and the NDI feeds. That's something that a lot of people have been asking for. So once I think they figure it out, or they figure out a way to give it to third-party other developers as well, it could probably make it a very powerful tool. Like if you think about a lot of the discussion we had about moving OH into the cloud or Madding the Kitchen into the cloud, one of the biggest challenges was getting separated audio out of Zoom, of the speakers. So we could actually manage it, mix it, level it, process it independent of each other. So this capability is probably going to make it a lot more powerful. It might not work, it might not be as needed on the ground in hardware on-prem solutions, but definitely the cloud, it's probably going to be a game changer.
I will just say that we have really changed a lot in my experience. It used to be golden master and ship when everything is right. The world now, particularly in software development, is more ship and iterate. I mean, you don't want anything bad in there, but if you can ship it and then get feedback and iterate so that you're meeting the customer's needs as they express them to you, seems to be where most all software goes. So I keep my fingers crossed that this 1.0 is going to develop into something that helps even more people. Leland, you want to pop in?
Just one thing about this whole Zoom and NDI and all these capabilities that have been built. We have to keep in mind that this is just a tool set that was really built for a specific use case when you think about it, to build these large scale events that continue to scale up, and having ways to bring these video content creators or the presenters into those environments. Yet it doesn't mean that other productions can't be built. I think a lot of people tend to focus specifically on Zoom as like the only go-to nowadays to build a production. And we tend to forget that we can still use a lot of the software and hardware resources we've always had to produce content and go directly to the social network that's being viewed or watched by the audience outside of Zoom. So just always consider Zoom doesn't have to be part of your workflow, doesn't have to be part of your toolbox. It's just kind of a hot topic right now.
Beiju.
Yeah, I just wanted to say the Windows version of 5.7 seems to have dropped. I'm just updating it right now. So let's see how it goes.
So something new to kick the tires on. Excellent. All right, moving on to John D. Post in Huntersville, North Carolina. I have a problem with Discord and my Mix Pre 3 and Heil PR40. The audio pulses in and out even if I use push to talk, where it goes from no sound to increasing volume in like 1 second cycles. Any thoughts about troubleshooting? Do we have any of our audio folks here? Sounds a little bit to me like some sort of an AGC thing happening. That can sometimes cause level pulsing, but without anything more specific than that, it looks like we may be a swing and a miss on this one. We do have, we got a couple of people who have raised their hand suddenly. All right, Carl and then Roscoe.
So just make sure you don't have any auto dynamics on. So you may have two conflicting auto dynamics. So this is like compression and gate on those kind of things. Just make sure you don't have those on. So maybe a factory reset will be the best place to start. We'll start there. And then, just make sure all the dynamics that are in the Mix Pre 3 are off if you don't need them.
And Roscoe.
I was just going to say, it's not a swing and a miss if we can get Mickey to pitch. So if we can get Mickey here, we'll get a good answer.
Yeah, if you see Mickey on the panel, ask. And there, the other thing that I would say is also be aware of phase cancellation. If for some reason you are bringing in a second signal that might be on AGC or something, and it's out of phase, you will have phase cancellation on some certain signals, and it will drastically lower the volume of a signal expected to be at one level. It won't be. So just some things to investigate. Leland, you had a thought.
Just one other thing that I've run into with audio problems and PCs. If you're going to Discord and this is on a PC, watch your power supply, because power supplies do fail over time. And if you're using less than what's capable of your system, as you continue to add stuff to your unit, you may be overtaxing your computer's power supply. So take a look at where you're at as far as how much wattage you're using on that unit, and make sure you're not pushing too much power.
Great. So those are some things to think about. Let's move on to the next question. And it comes from David Breedy in New York. And he said, I missed some of the metamorphosis to Office Hours 2.0. And I'm wondering, is the show cutter in the Zoom event driving the experience, or is it being switched independently? Should we make Jesse try to talk about what he's doing while he's doing it? With that, he's grinning at me, so I haven't offended.
I'll talk about it. So we haven't fully worked out with Alex what Zoom 2.0 is going to be. With Zoom now, what we do is one person, it's rotating. Now I'm doing the cutting. So I'm the host. Now Bill is the host in the true sense, but I'm the host in the Zoom sense, which means that when I switch between gallery view and speaker view, the feed for everybody watching follows me. And that lets us choose on close-ups or gallery view. That's really the only option I can do is gallery, so we see everybody that's a panelist, or we see the person speaking. If I keep it on follow speaker, as other people's audio activates, the show automatically will cut to those other people. And I believe when we go to Office Hours 2.0, we're going to have maybe the ability to do 2 ups, 4 ups, depending on the amount of people that might be contributing most to a certain topic. For instance, if we're doing audio, we have Brian, Mickey, some of the other audio people that would be in a close-up type, like 4-up box, for instance, with Alex and another person. And that would be ideal in the sense that there could be a lot of quick back and forth between the 4. You could see their facial expressions, that type of thing. So there's a lot we could do as we move to something beyond Zoom's capabilities right now. And just stay tuned, because we're all kind of going to find out together what we're doing.
Yeah, it's interesting. This is the first time I've ever been involved in anything having to do with video where there's not an actual program monitor in real time so that you know exactly what's going out. You can watch on YouTube, but it's delayed by a substantial period of time. And so it's a little odd to be cutting a show live and not really knowing what they're seeing on the back end. The only person who has that information here is Jesse. So it's different. And we're hoping for better tools constantly as this grows out. I think that takes care of that. We're moving on to the next question. Douglas Carmichael is up next. In a live sound discussion, it was mentioned that some larger productions like award shows use live orchestras. If the orchestra is not a focus, could it easily be replaced by a computer programmer using Spitfire audio libraries or similar? Take it, Carl.
So if that award ceremony is California, I'd say union rules would say no. It'd be a union issue than anything else. You're gonna okay. On the moon, maybe, yeah, but for these award ceremonies, they have rules, and these rules are installed, and it's for reasons. But I would not want to go to an award ceremony if that's a gong night for my industry, and they just have a teenager with a laptop. That's it. I'd be like, no, thank you. I want at least a quartet.
And that does have an impact for the number of people who can make their living. I mean, if you're a violinist, how many gigs are there that pay well and are, great out there? And you don't want it to go down to zero. But Todd, who is very much involved in this as a violinist, will tell us the truth about that stuff. Go ahead, Todd.
Oh, goodness. Carl said it eloquently. You said it eloquently. Unions are there for a reason. And yeah, I mean, it's all been said as far as that particular side of it goes. And also the orchestra is never not the focus when the orchestra is playing. Number 2. But in the spirit of this question, I just wanted to take it just to right field one little bit to say that these Spitfire strings can be really beautiful when centered around a live player. Like if you have a live violinist and you know, in terms of a recording situation or an experimental situation, and you put live players and then augment them with some paddy strings, still you're putting musicians out of work. But as the sole proprietor of your thing who doesn't have that sort of resource, it's completely acceptable to enhance things with samples like that. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there because I know that Douglas also likes to engage in music making himself.
Let's go to Tlaloc and then Rupert McCraig. Go ahead, Tlaloc.
I would like to put in my word for the live orchestra because of the immediacy of it. We live in a world with 250 milliseconds of latency, and it's beautiful to be in a room where the latency all comes from the speed of sound. And that's one thing. And the second thing is I feel strongly that the mistakes are where the true beauty comes in. It's not really mistakes, it's the wrong word, but the non-perfections are where the true beauty comes in, and also the conductor can put space where space is needed for dramatic effect and for storytelling.
It's the Cindy Crawford's mole thing. Always comes back. Is perfection or is anyway? Rupert.
So I just often try to keep thinking of some of this stuff in reverse. If you are an orchestra, whether there's a market out there, if you have a facility to equip yourself with all the streaming equipment you need to stream your performance into another facility that's maybe has the live stage component, or just some way of getting yourself out there, and maybe there's just another way to look at it.
Brian Anderson.
Just to amplify what Tlaloc was saying, there are decisions being made by the conductor to stretch or to shorten something or to start playing to get that person to stop talking. There's a lot of things, and you could maybe do some of that with Spitfire, but there are decisions being made where to jump in the score that I think a live orchestra and a conductor is going to do a much better job of.
Fair enough. We're moving on. Paul Valus of the panel occasionally, in fact, often. How do I split the output of a cable box to a monitor and an Atem Mini Pro with just one device? Carl raises his hand immediately.
So you can get splitters. They're going to be on Amazon. So you get a 1-to-4 splitter, but a matrix would be better quality and more useful because a matrix is more like a Swiss Army knife rather than just, a screwdriver.
Rupert.
Yeah, I've had real good luck with just these little 1-to-2 splitters. Mostly you have to power them, but I've tried a few, and I'll leave a link to this one. This has been the most reliable.
Beju, then Roscoe.
Yeah, the props on the 1-to-2, I have a dozen of them. I use them at a lot of different places. The matrices are nice, and you can get some decent ones from Monoprice. There are $50 or so for 4x4 or 1:4. Sorry, 4:2 or something like that. And those might probably be a lot more flexible.
And Roscoe.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, Carl, you didn't mean by better quality that the signal is improved in any way. You just meant that
it's more about utilitarian, what you can use it for in the future.
Yeah, so the quality, those points, because people get real, so Paul, Monoprice splitter, that's my pitch.
Yeah. All right. Moving on. Douglas Carmichael's up next. And he says, expanding upon yesterday's comment about mentoring new employees, what would you think of an office hours skills bank list on officehours.global of each person's skills, rates, and availability, informal mentioning, formal collaboration, and so forth? We've actually chatted about that, and Alex has chatted about that. I think there are some aspects of that. I know he doesn't want to turn this into a jobs board, and there has been some pushback a little bit about making that too big a part of it. But as we get to know the community, I will say, just getting to know people by virtue of their participation in office hours has woken me up to how talented this panel of people are and how much I have come to rely on their advice, and in some cases even hire them to do work when it's appropriate, because you can just see these are incredibly competent people. So being here, maybe this is one of those things where just showing up is a big part of it. Rupert, go ahead and take it from there.
Like you said, it's been sort of discussed before from different angles. And I remember at certain points, it's been said that LinkedIn, that's what LinkedIn is for a lot of cases, to list your experience and things like that. So that's kind of out of band maybe for this community, for this platform.
Let's do Aaron, then Roscoe, then Leland. Go ahead, Aaron.
I think I've done a lot of like open source community management in the past. And when you start putting people into buckets, the community dies. It just happens. And there's a lot to be said for having people that don't know anything answer questions about things they don't know, because then you can learn from them. And they can learn from you, and there's a conversation there, as opposed to this person knows about, technology X. That's very limiting, and it is very difficult to overcome once it sort of latches on.
Roscoe, Leland, then Liberty. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, good. Just the Discord really functions in this. The Discord is so broken down into specialties and production items that you go in there, and the great thing there is you go in and ask a question. If that expert's not in that group, I guarantee you people in that group know where that expert is somewhere in this because of the production relationships that have already existed. So just use the Discord for this.
As a team ourselves, we've managed, and this might sound lurkish, but we've managed to build our own little database of people that we watch on the show that we feel would probably benefit ourselves, or that we could benefit, in unison. So in that fact, it's kind of, you see us come out here every day. Keep track of who we are. Go look for us. If you search Leland Best, I show up pretty much everywhere, like most of these people will as well. Look for our websites. Go check out our websites. And if you have to search places like about.me, a lot of us post things there. Or like we said, LinkedIn is another profile location. And I think it's a key point that we keep Discord away from being a job board, so that it is more of a collaboration board.
Fair enough. Liberty, you work in human resources adjacent things sometimes, don't you? Or
Myself, event marketing, video marketing, the fusion of the two worlds, but great answers. And just to add on to that, that's where the pre-show and the post-show come in to really get to know even more, because it's great to know someone's talent, but then their character also plays a great role in that as well. And then I know that I've worked with some people all based off of conversations in the post-show, and it's like, hey, we've got a project. So just a melange of all of what we've said, pulling that together can really be beneficial.
Perfect. All right. Douglas Carmichael has the next question, and he wants to talk about acoustics, which we talked about yesterday, I think, a little bit. He says they released a public service announcement, and he has the link there, about bringing speakers into operation after a year of non-use with no live audience. How have live sound engineers kept up their mixing skills? That is an interesting topic, I think, because as a video shooter producer, the first gig that I went out after being a year off, I was rusty. Boy, I can tell you, I pulled out checklists on top of checklists that I hadn't looked at in 10 years because I hadn't used those skills daily for a full year. Carl, your thoughts?
So most professionals only need like a rehearsal to get the cobwebs out. So once they go through the rehearsal, 1 or 2 days of rehearsals, they'll be back to it.
Okay, fair enough. That's interesting. Jeffrey has a note up that we have a lot of untagged questions. So if you have put questions in and you have not tagged them for second hour, and if they are in the StreamYard topic, you can go back to your question, click on that little, looks like a rectangle with a point on it. I guess it's a polygon or something. And then re-tag your question to that. That will really help us manage the questions correctly. Talak has a comment.
Just real quickly, I wanted to say about, in a more general way about this question, in coming back after having not worked, it's interesting. The vocabulary we use to speak with each other as production people or as designers is not automatic, and we have to practice it. And so I found when I came back to live opera design work, it took a second to really remember how to talk to a director and make sure that the information that I'm giving out is understood and so that we don't end up in like a circle of understanding. So I just wanted to take an opportunity to say.
Yeah, I also found, this is maybe just my circumstance, but I was shooting on a new camera too. I had a Blackmagic 6K out in the field and I had never used it before. So there were little tiny subtleties of using that I would have been in my brain if I'd been using it every week for the past 52 weeks, but I hadn't. So I had to come up to speed faster on that. Aaron, do you have a comment before we move on?
I was talking to a friend of mine who worked on the Eurovision song contest in Rotterdam this year. And, that's like going from nothing to, infinity speed all at once. And it's a huge production. And he was working on lights, and they have, 1,800 fixtures and 12 lighting boards and blah, blah, blah. But he said, like what Tlalak was saying is that the technical part wasn't that hard. That's pretty straightforward from his from getting back into the technical part was not hard, but getting into the communication and the interactions with human beings part was really the rough part. The tech stuff comes back.
All right, let's move on. We're going to Yash Mori of Washington, D.C. Yash says, has anyone used Isadora with an external GPU? I'm on a 2018 Mac Mini with Blackmagic eGPU, and it crashes every time I try to open the app. Anybody? Tlalak, go.
I have not tried to use an external GPU because I've been told by some of the developers and some of the power users that they don't do well with that. So it may be that there's a problem in the makeup of the program. I think they've been working on trying to get it to work, but that's why I believe that is why you're having problems with it crashing. Before you make that total decision, go to the forum and write on the forum, and they will help you and send you a way to delete the preferences for Isadora, and that may actually fix the problem for you right away.
Great advice. All right. Well, hopefully that'll solve it for you. If not, come back and we'll take another shot at it. Let's move on. Vienna, Australia is the header here. What recommendations do you have for lighting a person on Zoom when the wall behind them is white? Go ahead, Roscoe.
Well, this is the classic use for a ring light. A ring light uses the human body as a giant flag. A flag is a thing that blocks the light from where you don't want it to go. So the thing about a white wall is the reflections or the potential luminance of the wall overshadows the front of the person. So get as much light as you can on their face without necessarily trying to get less reflection coming back off that wall. So ring light.
Leo Mendel.
So the walls behind me are white. And it is not the Golden Gate Bridge. And they are lit by power tubes behind me, and then I have a downlight 450 or what I think it is in front of me.
Ken Jordan. I'm sorry. I must have been muted.
Yeah, it really depends on how far that white wall is away from the subject to really give a proper answer, because if the white wall is far enough away, it's I really can't answer it without knowing more realistically what is the distance between the subject and the wall behind them, to then better recommend the kind of lighting that you can do. My wall is quite far enough behind that I can light it, and my advice for that would be very different to if the wall is, just a foot behind them.
We're going to go to Roscoe and then Carl Asmussen. Roscoe.
I was just going to add what Ken just said is a color light. So if you can add any kind of color to that back wall, that will certainly help. So,
Carl.
So yeah, if you have a white wall behind you, if you're in a hotel and you can't avoid having a white wall behind you, then the inverse square law is your friend. So you want to get yourself as far away from that white wall as possible and get the light as big and close to you as possible. That'll turn your white wall into a grey wall. And then like Ken does, you can splash some color in there if you've got a light that has a little bit of color.
Fair enough. Let's move on to Douglas Carmichael, who's up next. And Douglas says, what strategies have worked best for finding the most compatible collaborators for a specific project? Is it basically looking for the required skills first and then auditioning them, or is it more a complex process in some cases? Who among the panel, Liberty, has some experience in this? Go ahead.
Yeah, so we work with a lot of contractors, and just depending on the project, when you're building a team, what I found very useful is like once you find that one person, asking them who else? Like I'm looking for another editor, or I'm looking for another shooter or audio. And really so the quick answer is yes, it's auditioning. I always like to try to make sure that we bring them in also on a smaller project if possible, to just see how they flow, or just being mindful of the responsibility that we give to them, unless of course they come highly recommended and they're highly specialized. So those are just some of the things that work best when I'm recruiting for talent.
If you guys couldn't see the gallery view, I saw more heads nodding on that answer than any we've had so far. Roscoe, can I add something?
Yeah, there's an old term called above the line, below the line, which is more accounting, but there are people that are on the project from a creative standpoint. Those are going to be on the project from the beginning all the way to the end. Then there are people that are on the project for maybe just a day. Sometimes you can bring somebody in for just a day that, you know, you're there, they're there for their skills, their personality you can deal with for a day. But and so even though it's a concept, you also have to think how key are they to the overall success of the project? Maybe for just one day, they'll be great.
Rupert.
I just like watching people work, you know, so if you can get into a situation where you can witness somebody working rather than a sort of synthetic audition, then if you have that opportunity, I take it. Always try and watch people work.
Leland, and then we'll go back to Liberty real quick, and we're going to start to accelerate the pace a little bit because we've got a lot of questions.
We have, as a team, have collaborated quite a bit out here on Office Hours over the last year. We've built several different productions with different people off of this panel itself. It's all about trust, and it's all about building a relationship with the individuals that you have that trust in, and it's that will continue to maintain momentum as you move ahead. So just look for those people that you can really rely on and discard those that you cannot. That's a big factor.
Liberty, you want to wrap us up real quick?
Yeah, and then to tie on to Leland, and also making sure, are they client facing or are they just, you know, in the back of scenes? Because some people just watching their temperament, and that's not something you want to just have happen on your set.
Amen to that. All right, moving on. Vienna in Australia is back, and this time says, for high schools that don't teach media, what are the core fundamentals that are required in a new syllabus, and how can educators get young people interested in media and production? And I'm just going to side note here, traditionally here, Saturday is Education Day, and Alex has some specific things he's doing right now with it. But still, if you're interested in education and how video and audio and all this stuff and computers tie into education, come on Saturdays and chat. You'll find a very fertile ground for those kind of discussions. Anybody else want to get in, or do we just? Aaron, go ahead.
I just want to say, I think as a parent of a 13-year-old. I think kids these days, and you know, other friends and stuff, kids are already baked in to know about how media wants to work, or how they want media to work. You just work with that. Like, the tech isn't the problem anymore. The tech is pretty straightforward for them. It's all the stuff on top of it. So storytelling, writing, planning, all the stuff that's not fun, right? But you need to do it to be successful. That's my 2 cents, at least.
Okay, we're just going to do a couple more real quick, even 30 seconds. Roscoe and Tlaloc.
Yeah, first of all, let them tell stories that they want to tell, and secondly, show them how an organized crew functions to make those stories better. So if you give them I have 4 positions, I won't go through them right now, but if ping me off, I'll give you, here's the 4 people you need to do any production, and then just organize them and let them go. They will find amazing things to do.
Wrap it up, Tlaloc.
In the larger educational sense, let them do video production to present rather than a paper, and that have them do that about a science project.
Excellent. All right, moving on. Eric Price, Leavenworth, Kansas, our next questioner. When using an older DSLR whose video with limits of 20 to 30 minutes as a webcam, what's the risk of the sensor overheating when running them longer than that through clock reset or firmware hack? And what is the long-term effect on those? Carl Asmussen.
So I'm right now coming to you through an older DSLR, mine's 6 years old. So that 30-minute or 29-minute, 59-second restriction is only for recording. So when using it as a webcam, you're going to have HDMI out of the camera into an Atem or some other video capture device. So as long as you're not recording, the camera won't get hot. It only gets hot when you record. So if you're just streaming, essentially it's just a display that you're pumping out. So whatever image is usually on the back display of the DSLR, when you plug in HDMI, normally that display will just go out of your HDMI. So it won't overheat. You will need a dummy battery if you're going to go more than like an hour or two, because your battery will die. So you may need a dummy battery unless your camera is able to be charged via a cable, but most DSLRs don't. But yeah, you won't have, my camera is on 6 hours every day, 7 days a week, pretty much.
So unless you've got it in a closed environment or something like that, or in direct sunlight, you shouldn't have a problem.
No, that shouldn't be a problem either because you're not recording. Cameras only get hot when they're recording. When using webcam mode, you don't have to record. You may want to have a card in there though. The only reason why you want a card in there though is because you may get a warning on your screen, which may always show up on your HDMI. So popping a card in there will get rid of any warnings.
There you go. Brian, real quick.
Yeah, that 29-minute limit was put in place to avoid some kind of a law where if something recorded for longer than that, it had a new classification and had to be, I forget if it was tariffs or something like that, but it made it more expensive. So the 29 limit is just an arbitrary thing to avoid a legal issue.
Moving on, Frank Berman says, can you point us to the most reliable and step-by-step published method to spin up and maintain vMix in the cloud? Well, this looks like it's for our next section. So I'm going to push that over and we'll deal with this. Well, it doesn't look like I can push that over.
I know that it is for the next section.
No, we're doing
well, I'll go see if I can recover it and get into the next section stuff.
Bill, just on that last question, one thing that the person should check is whether they can get a clean HDMI feed out of their DSLR, because not all cameras can do it. If yours can't do it, you're golden.
Okay, Talalak, you want to say something real quick?
I'm just going to really quickly say about that question that got moved over. If you go to the Office Hours website, you can find all the AWS shows that we've done here, and that's a really good place to.
Fair enough. Still trying. There we go. Now I got into the right column. So let's move on. John Foltz, Sellings Grove, Pennsylvania. Is there any chance Carl could demo how he masks the background for his Keynote images? It's a little uncomfortable to ask somebody to do a demo who might not be prepared. We'll ask Carl. Carl, are you comfortable with that, or do you want to come back to it another day? And
I am always prepared.
I know you are. Why did I even ask that? It was silly of me.
So I'm going to show you I'm going to show you a build order. You'll be able to figure it out. But so essentially, what you do is you start with a blank background. So this is your blank background. So in Keynote, I've just got one that's got a gradient on it. But it can be white, it can be black, it can be whatever you choose. Then what you want to do is you simply just want to add in your elements. So add in some graphics. You can get these directly out of Keynote if you're going to add graphics. The next thing you can do is you can literally just go for a Google image search and drag, if you're in Safari, drag from Google image search directly into Keynote. So just drag in your images you want to drag in and put them in as well. And once you've put in all your images you want to put in for your slide, then you may want to put in some joining lines, which Keynote will do quite nicely. Then the most important thing is go find a current price of what it is you're doing. And here I'm pricing the whole system. And so you put in the whole price of the system. And then what I'm doing is I'm saving in Keynote, and I have Keynote opened on an iOS device. The iOS device is plugged into my Atem Mini via HDMI. And when I save my Keynote on my computer, it shows up within a few seconds on my iOS device. And then I just switch over to my iOS device on my Atem. And that's how you're going to see it.
So basically, each of the builds is a separate slide, and he's just using the transitions in Keynote to bring things in. And there's all sorts of transitions. You can do really pretty complex looking stuff. Great job, Carl, as always. The king of Keynote describers here in Office Hours. Fabulously done. Let's move on to the next topic here. From Vienna, Austria again. What sort of gear do you recommend for recording long-distance sports from the athlete's point of view? Ideally, minimal in profile and secure on the body. And Carl's going to come right back.
There are two body cams, which we may see in the Winter Olympics coming up. In a year or so, which for skiers. The other one, which may not be good for athletes, but is good for some sports, is drones. Essentially drones that follow the athletes as they are doing what they're doing. Again, Winter Olympics, maybe extreme sports, if they sign a waiver saying if this drone hits you, but they may be wearing a helmet, so they may be okay.
Aaron.
I think many athletes, depending on the sport, would have issues with having a camera on them just because it screws them up, or, perceived, performance issues, but also just like there's a big, tunnel vision kind of thing going on here, and you're like putting crap on me, and nobody wants that.
Well, I do understand that. I'm thinking of the speed skaters who concern themselves with how many millimeters of fabric are on their body because it might make a difference in their wind flow.
Exactly.
As they're
fencing in the Olympics already has body cams. They've already done that for the last
so
two
I guess
Olympics.
It depends on the sport. Yeah, fencing makes sense. Curling, probably not a big issue, but there's some speed sports that it probably is a problem. Let's go to Frank Berman's question next. I'm running a few local physical vMix again. So I'm just gonna hop down to the next one.
We're not talking about vMix next hour, though. We're talking about other things next hour.
Oh,
yeah, we're talking about Restream and Streamyard, not vMix.
I'm sorry, my bad. So let's do it. Vienna, Australia, what sort of lighting setup do you recommend to downlight, to properly and evenly light a person in an environment? Wait a second, this isn't the vMix question. Have I managed to bungle this? If so, I'm sorry.
Go back one more.
Let's go back. I'm running a few.
Well, we'll go to the next. Let's go to the next question. I'll take care of that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So we are going to Brett Dykas's question. What does the panel have any favorite iPad with pencil markup or note-taking apps to be used in the field or for production? Anybody know of? Go ahead, Jesse.
I like Procreate if you're drawing things. Like for me, I go and measure floor plans instead of taking a clipboard and a pencil like I used to. I actually take Procreate, which has really nice choices of tips and that type of thing.
Cool. Beju, and then Ken Jordan.
So for simple note-taking with a pencil, I like Notability. That's pretty simple and easy to use. You can easily make multiple notes and multiple pages. You can also make the background black, so you can use that as a keying source as well for Illustrator, which works nicely for that. If you are marking up PDFs, I find PDF Expert's probably one of the better ones out there. You can easily have multiple tabs open with multiple PDFs, and you can sync them to different cloud drives such as iCloud, Dropbox, etc. So you can pull the PDF in, mark it up, and have it saved back automatically as a copy or as it however you want to use it. It's pretty nice.
Oh, Ken Jordan.
Yes, someone has used probably, I don't know if I've got that 30 or 40 different note apps on my iPad. In the end, I revert back just to using Notes, the way that it just seamlessly integrates with all the Macs and the phone. That's what, in the end, I kind of revert back to. And with the latest version of, I think it's iOS 15, the way Notes, Apple have integrated Notes in the next operating system. I think that's going to show like a lot of these other noting apps.
Yeah, I have to admit, I agree with Ken. I spend more time in Notes and use Notes more this year than I probably ever had in years before. It seems like it's really smooth and does a lot of stuff. So let's move on. Frank Berman has our. Frank says, I'm running a few local physical vMix systems. Thank you for bringing this one back. I'd like to better understand the math behind my network traffic to distinguish, say, all the local and NDI traffic versus what's on my FIOS circuit, outbound and inbound. So do we have any of the network rangers here who can help us talk through this? We're going to start with Rupert and go to Aaron after that. Go ahead, Rupert.
You could kind of piecemeal this together by doing little bits of monitoring here and there, looking at your FIOS using a managed switch, but really to get an end-to-end visibility on what your network is doing, you need an end-to-end seamless system with a management interface behind it. I use Ubiquity. It gives me stats over all my switches and my router upload, download. I can see it all there in graphical format, charts, all that stuff.
Aaron?
Yeah, what he said.
Okay, that's simple enough. So that sounds like the definitive word. We're moving on to the next question. Comes from Frank Berman, and he says, can you point us to the most reliable and step-by-step published method to spin up and maintain vMix in the cloud through AWS? I feel like I'm dealing with a patchwork quilt of instructions and need a clear, reliable, step-by-step algorithm here. Leland Best will take a shot at it.
I left AWS's link for building a vMix instance on EC2 in the chat. I'll try to make sure that that gets transferred over to Discord, certainly. There's also a video link there to one of the Razer Gaming team members who built the first rendition of a dual vMix on the cloud system for when the esports gaming environment really had to kick into high gear during the pandemic. So that'll give you a quick video rundown of how to put that system together on EC2.
Rupert, real quick, we got 10 minutes left and still a few questions here.
So whenever I'm looking at a piece of documentation, the first thing I look for is the date. When was this published? Am I looking at the most recent, most relevant piece of information?
And Beiju.
Yeah, just go back to the step-by-step that Tucker did on building a vMix instance in the cloud. That's got a lot of the details, and it's a very nice summarization of everything. So look up the link to that episode of Office Hours.
Okay, moving on. Leo Mendel has our next question here on the panel from Pinner in the UK. I ordered the Nanlink RC1 for my lights, but they shipped the WSRC-C1, which is better at the RC. Which is better? At the RC radio control one is a higher price. Punctuation failed me there, but Leo, do you want to more clearly tell us what you're looking for?
Yeah, they shipped me this one, the RC1, WSRC-C1s, when I actually ordered the RC1, which is a bigger one with an LCD panel. Before I return these, has anybody used either or both and have any advice on which one is better?
Todd Reynolds is showing us something. Todd, do you have a comment on that?
I bought this one in person. And I didn't realize that there was the other one, Leo. And the first one I got was inoperable, and B&H in true form sent me one immediately and didn't ask for the other one back of the same one. And it worked perfectly. So, and it's great. It's got a channel switcher. I'm not sure whether you can rig this up in any way to fire two lights at the same time, but I have a feeling that you can. And my autofocus on my Sony really is not working, is it? So yeah, it's great. It's great. It dims really, really well, very quickly.
Okay, hope that takes care of the question. Let's move on to Douglas Carmichael's question next. I've been looking at cost-effective racks for a networking lab and found the monoprice 12-unit rack with locking casters. Would there be a caster replacement that would keep the rack in one place on carpet and reduce the risk of unexpected movement? I would imagine that you can find locking casters for almost anything, but let's do Aaron and then Rupert real quick.
Those usually come in broken down and flat pack. You don't have to put the casters on. You can just set it on the floor if you want.
That's a simple.
You could also screw in the adjustable feet that you get for like washing machines and stuff.
Rupert McRae.
Yeah, exactly that. Those wheels are generally on threaded screws. You could just replace those with a threaded foot. But putting it right on the ground may not be good because the gap underneath might form part of the airflow.
Yeah, see what your airflow is and whether you have fans in place and make sure that that's not necessary for keeping your equipment cool. That does shorten the life of equipment. Let's move on. Ron DeMuth, Great Falls, Montana. Why does Jesse Swartz look so washed out today? Jesse was having struggles with his lighting. And do you want to quickly mention what you faced?
Sure. So I picked up a couple of these Godox lights that Carl recommended. I don't remember the model. It's something like TL30 or anyway. So I bought two, and when I saw that question, I'm like, you know what? They were charging because they just came in, and I was waiting for them to be fully charged before I put them up to see what the battery life is. It's rated at about an hour, but I was going to do a real world test. Saw the question that I'm looking washed out because it's true. I balanced for both these lights that I got, and then the battery died 1 hour into it. So they're both charging. I didn't fire up my Atem control, which controls my Blackmagic 6K. So the way I looked was the way I looked, and I'm busy cutting the show. There's a lot to getting everything lit properly.
Can you do a lightsaber battle between yourself?
Right now, I'm doing more than I actually am good at doing, honestly. So
Since we have to move along pretty quickly,
yeah, let's move along. Exactly.
Let me just note that
shepherds me along very nicely.
Let me just note that lighting is always a balance between your aperture, shutter speed, the amount of light, where the lights are placed. That's why lighting designers get paid a lot, and they should, because it's this balance of things that makes the picture pretty. So all those things have to be taken into consideration, not just where's the light and how much light is on there. It's a relationship and set of ratios. In fact,
right.
Professional lighting people talk about lighting ratios all the time.
Yeah. Tlalak, who I'm still struggling getting his name pronounced correctly, could tell us, I'm sure, a lot about proper lighting. He's a lighting designer for a stage. At any rate, so Carl pulled up the graphic on the lights that I have. What's great about them is that they are magnetic on one end. I happen to have metal brackets above me that they just snap right onto. So it's pretty convenient, and you can change. I mean, Carl just give a little overview of these lights.
Unfortunately, we only got 5 minutes left. We have a few more questions, and I know people are really interested in this StreamYard thing, so I want to try to get through all our regular questions first. But come back, ask the question again, and we'll dive in for more time. Right now, we're going to move to Jim Schaefer in Minnesota. Didn't know if it's Minneapolis or not. Windows 11, Microsoft.
Wrong question. And you're muted.
Bill, you're muted.
Thank you. Douglas Carmichael up at the top. I've heard Windows 11 will be mainly a user experience update with few to no changes or improvements to the internals of Windows. Have any of you heard anything contradictory? Who's heard something? Liam Mandela is waving his hand. No, he's not waving his hand. He was waving his hand to fool me. Aaron, go ahead.
There are a lot of changes under the hood. It's 64-bit only for one. Any 32-bit stuff is emulated. So
this is my experience on the Mac when they did the 32-bit is gone, moved to 64-bit. I had to look back over decades of old programs and see what was going to totally fail and get rid of it before I made the 64-bit switch. I don't know if this is going to be the same, but if so, pay attention, do your homework.
Yeah, we'll see if it lasts. But yeah, right now it's 64-bit only. We'll see if they change it.
Bill, you're muted again.
Uptime, thank you. Jim Schaefer in Minnesota says Windows 11 Microsoft is known for OS good bad cycles. 11 is set to be to the bad but good. Microsoft break the cycle with Windows 11. Any thoughts? So same basic discussion. Leland, you want to quickly weigh in on that?
Yeah, anything that's said about Windows 11 right now is simply speculation. If you're hearing word about techs are saying this and techs are saying that, it's really not going to be fully observed until Windows 11 drops. So it's all just really hype and fluff right now. Wait for the real thing.
It's a big topic. So Rupert, real quick.
Yeah, just about what Microsoft is known for. That's basically all history. I mean, a lot of that pattern was based on when OSs were bought in a box off a shelf. Release cycles are much faster now.
Okay, moving on. Jim Schaefer in Minnesota. What does the panel think will be the next smartphone type device breakthrough? I see the industry going into rolling, unfolding device screens, but it's not really a breakthrough normal phones can't already do. So Rupert, do you have a couple of thoughts? And Carl, and then we'll move on.
In a lot of our markets, iPhone and Samsung dominate things, but a lot of other areas, in places in the world, that's not the case. And I did notice the other day that Huawei have developed their own OS for their own phones. So that might just be an advancement in other regions. I think one of the features we may see drop off in time would be that phones will no longer make phone calls.
That would be interesting. Carl, real quick, we've only got 2 minutes left.
So yeah, one of the most interesting things was that Steve Jobs named it iPhone when it's not a phone. It's a handheld computer. It's always been a handheld computer, and that's how we use it. The word phone is a weird nomenclature that's held over from the 20th century, but they're handheld computers. And handheld computers, if they fit in your hand and they do what you want, essentially the screen fits in your hand, that's the main thing. Companies try to make these exotic designs just to stand out in the marketplace. The slab of glass in your hand that fits in your hand and does what you ask, that's what's important.
John Preto, real quick, we're down to the wire here.
One word, wearables, that's the future.
Wearables are the future. There you go. Daniel Goldstein is up next. We've been teased twice recently with announcements for new products, the Blackmagic Web Presenter HD and Zoom 5, that are still not yet available. Do the panelists know when either or both will finally be available? Generally, the answer to that is no, because in most of those kind of leading edge things are on under NDA. And if you know, you can't say anything. And if you can say something, you don't know. But let's really quickly, Carl and Roscoe, just to make points, then we'll move on.
The Blackmagic Representer HD is available, has been for some time. Members of the panel have them. If you're seeing your store, like B&H say it's coming soon, it means it is available. You just have to kind of pre-order. Here in Australia, I've looked at 4 or 5 stores. They're all in stock in Australia. So B&H is a place where it's just out of stock at the moment.
Roscoe.
The only panelist who would know would be Guy Cochran when the boat is actually shipped with stuff on it.
Yeah. Some of the bigger dealers do get, the container ship is on its way. Let's move Craig McFarland real quick from Boston. What headset would you recommend for live guests that need to stand up and move around? What's an inexpensive and isn't bulky or complicated? Who wants to run through the quick, very, very quickly? Let's do Roscoe real quick and then Ken for just a second, and we'll finish.
What I'm wearing, which is any kind of a Pulson or a Pile, put it into a GoPro 2 little system, real small, pretty inexpensive, quite mobile.
Okay, we still have a bunch of. I'm gonna do 2 more questions. We've got about 4 or 5 more before we get to StreamYard. But I do think since we promoted it, a lot of people wanted to do the StreamYard thing. Roscoe, do you have a
quick? Not a GoPro, Rode Go, not a GoPro, a Rode Go. Very important.
GoPro. Okay, Douglas Carmichael next. I currently own a 2013 Mac Pro with a 6-core, 3.5 gigahertz Xenon with 32 gigabytes of RAM. Considering that Apple seems to be rapidly moving towards Apple Silicon, would it be best to go for the M1 Mac or stick with the refurbished Intel Mac? Who's making buy decisions based on that? And this is personal, but I moved to Apple's new stuff because they have a tendency to go forward and never look back. And I do know that it takes a while. They don't usually deprecate things in the first year, 2, 3, or even 4, but eventually it's going to not work. And I prefer to get into the new stuff earlier. Beju, do you have a thought before we move on?
Just on this right now, because Apple's coming up probably with more higher end configs in the near future. If you need something right now, go for the M1. The only thing is, if you're especially like Douglas, he's in audio production, you need to make sure that your softwares or your plugins are supported on the M1. Otherwise, if you need a machine now, you might end up just buying a cheaper Intel machine right now, which is still probably better performance than your 2013 Mac Pro.
There you go. Let's move on. Douglas Carmichael. Has there been any discussion regarding improvements to the audio, MIDI, or video engines in Windows 11 that would benefit our industry? Anybody know anything about the audio pipeline in Windows 11? I'm seeing no head shake. So we're going to, as this develops, people will know, you'll be reading about it, and we will certainly talk about it here on Office Hours. We're making pretty fast progress. So let's try to hack a couple more of these through. Anybody been following BlackBerry? Jim Schaefer in Minnesota says. And onward mobility for the next BlackBerry device. Apparently, BlackBerry prototypes got a lot of hype from the major companies as the most secure device that will come out this year or next. They updated their production numbers. Is anybody looking back at BlackBerry? It's a fine name from the past, but boy, it certainly isn't on the radar for most people I know now. Rupert, real quick.
Yeah, nothing recent, but I do remember in the past, this is going back a long time, BlackBerries, you were able to get them into some secure environments that you weren't able to get other equipment into. They had some stuff back there, but I imagine that's different now.
Absolutely. I remember when President Obama, that's all they let him use in the White House back during that era. Let's just move on and get the rest of these next 2 off. John Gerard in Berkeley says, for the Simonic Plus DI, the stereo breakout cable I found on Amazon is a 3.5 millimeter female to left and right XLR cables. That looks like a comment, not a question. So is anyone using Apple AirTags for anyone? Has anyone got one on their pet yet? Brent Dykus asked that in New York. And yes, I'm raising my hand. I have one on my pet. I also have one, interestingly, in the glove compartment of my car, because somebody said, what happens if somebody steals your car? Why not see if you can track it? I don't know if it's going to work, but I've got a couple of them in those kind of circumstances. Jesse Schwartz real quick, and then Jeffrey Powers real quick.
I have 2. One is on my daughter, so not exactly a pet, but I put it on her backpack and I can track her at school when I'm picking her up. And the other is on my keys to the motorcycle. I've got to say they haven't worked as well as I was hoping.
Yeah, it's a V1 product, and we're going to see. Jeffrey.
Yeah, it's supposed to ping millions and millions of other iPhones to find your tags, but there are some security issues that have passed by already, so that could actually be changing within the next couple months here. But yeah, I haven't tried it. I got them on my keyring.
Kalala?
I have it on my keyring. I really wish that if I leave the house without my keys, that my phone would tell me. It doesn't do that.
That's interesting. There's a development note. Carl and Leland, and then we're going to move into the new StreamYard topic. Carl, go ahead real quick, and then Leland.
So the new iOS that's coming out in September, Talak will do that. So it's a feature in the new update. So don't worry, it's coming.
There we go. Last question. Go ahead.
And while beacons are great, if past experience is any key to the future, Google had beacons years ago that really never panned out. So I think Apple's just trying to take a leap into that niche. I don't see it going real far.
And I wasn't going to do this, but I absolutely must, because it's an important question and we must address it here on Office Hours. And it is, does anyone else have a cat that thinks it's meow time every time you enter a Zoom meeting? Just a Friday fun question. Leland says yes. I do know that Charlie, my little dog, when I go on Zoom calls, gets annoyed that I close the door on him. So, all right. We are now to our special second hour presentation, and this is going to be the smackdown between StreamYard and, well, it's not going to be a smackdown. We are going to discuss the pros and cons, and two of our often members here are going to dive into this. Leo Mindell and Jeffrey Powers have been looking into what StreamYard does well, what these other services do well, and have some sort of a comparison to give us some more information to that. So if you have questions, we've already got 4 or 5 in, but if you have more questions about the StreamYard nexus of devices, please put them in. And which one of you guys wants to go first here in preamble? Jeffrey, Leo?
Leo, go first.
Okay, Leo's been forced to take the baton.
That's fine. Okay, so hopefully you can see me, and hopefully you can see another screen that's come in here. If it isn't there, somebody can double pin it in there.
We do see one that says StreamYard output in the lower part.
And is that running? Is that running?
Yeah, it appears, yes, it has a crawl at the bottom. I can see it moving.
Yeah, that's it. Great. Okay, so I'm actually going to show you the back end of StreamYard as I do it, and then the output that you're going to see is going to appear in that output one. For audio reasons, I'm not going to pipe the audio from StreamYard through into this because it'll be too messy, because there are people who are in this meeting who are going to be in there as well. So you should now see that my view of me has changed so that you're actually seeing the back end. And if you can see there's me on the left, the next one along is actually this coming through. And if you're interested, I'm doing this via AWS. David has sent me a video or something that's automatic playing.
Hey, Leo, I think our experience at this point, my experience is the StreamYard gradient output with the red stripe at the bottom is in my left screen. Then I have the Leo Mindell, London, UK with you in a circular inset. Is that what you're expecting?
Yeah, that should be right. You should be seeing 2 versions you should be, the one is so that you can actually see what StreamYard is outputting into here. Unfortunately, there isn't really a way. Well, there is actually. Anybody who is on YouTube can get the YouTube, the link. I put in Mukana the link to YouTube and to Facebook because I'm streaming to both of those at the moment, and they can actually comment on Facebook and YouTube and they will come through.
So in video terms, we're seeing basically a program monitor on the left and your preview monitor of how you're operating the software on the right with you as an inset.
That's it. And of course, I'm now absolutely thundering to death my i9 MacBook. As you can imagine, the video is going all over the place. So I'm going to drift out, but that's not the point. I'm just doing it as to demo. So across the bottom, I've got 5 or 6 people who've joined me. David, Liberty, Leland, Edwin, and Brian. So they're all there. So normally the typical layout is you get all of your preview screens across the bottom and then you're able to put people in. So I can put in something like that. I can bring Leland in and I can take Leland out. So that's a simple control of where we bring in him. What we also have is we have branding. So before I go quite further, this is the branding that I've set up for Office Hours, but it's very easy for me to jump to another brand that I've got here, and it brings in all the colors and everything that relates to that brand. So we'll go back into this brand because this is the brand we want to use.
You know, I'm seeing this, but as I'm looking up at my monitor overhead, I'm only seeing one screen, the operator's screen, not the export. So are we pinning correctly?
You can't.
The two up?
It's just the way you can't two up out of.
Understood.
It's just the way you can't do all of those bits. That's why I said that the YouTube. If somebody wants to watch the output in YouTube or in Facebook, they can see the output in YouTube or Facebook. Hopefully, they're going to comment in YouTube or Facebook because that's the way they're going to add to this event. So what I would normally do in the way I would launch is I would put up a sting. So I'm going to run a sting. I'm going to put Leland in and Liberty, but obviously we're not going to hear them because I've turned the audio off. But so the sting goes up. I drop Leland and Liberty behind the screen. And as soon as that sting finishes, and I take off the banner that's saying that it's the event starting shortly, that sting should finish and the two of them will appear straight on the screen. One of them smiles, one of them looks great, one of them is Leland.
Certainly Leland.
So that brings in two people. So we bring in two people into there. Once you bring two people in, you can then spotlight one. So we will flip Liberty over and we will spotlight Liberty. So Liberty could be having a conversation with Leland and it's fairly straightforward. And what we would do is normally you'd be hearing the two of them and they were talking backwards and forwards. When we use it, we normally flip between the two because it puts the spotlight on the person. Also, what we typically do is we tell people that we put them in the big window, and then when we put them back in there, that's a subtle hint to say that you've had enough time of your questions. It's time to move on to the next person. So we can now, that's just two people. We can bring in three. We can do exactly the same. So I've now brought in Edwin. And again, we can spin people and we can bring anybody in that way. So it's pretty easy to do it. The next thing that we have, as you saw earlier, is I had a ticker going across the bottom. So we can put tickers that run across the bottom. That's running in and saying whatever we like, but also what we can actually do is we can bring in questions. So we had this question that came in earlier and we can put in the questions straightforward. Streamyard has a number of brands, as we talked before, so I can actually change from that look to there's a more of a minimal look and a block look, so that and everything at the moment you're seeing is in red, so I can just change the color to something completely different. So if I go to a blue and I put it back to the bubble, you'll see that it can match and you can push things through. Top right hand corner is the Office Hours logo. I can change it to another logo. That's not a great logo to do it. And then what we also do, I do quite often, is I will do something like this. So I will put in, let me take that logo off. So although that looks like a logo, what I've actually done is I've done an animated GIF. And that animated GIF after 20 seconds will automate between the next thing. So at the moment you're seeing it's got one thing at the moment. And I've got to keep talking for another 10 seconds. And there you go. You see it changes without me actually touching anything. So it's this really nice feature to brand something so you can keep rotating brands across things while you're actually doing it. Okay, so that's the main things. Then the last bit I was going to show before I hand over to Jeffrey, and I've just got to find my where I've got to take that logo off. Sorry, I'm in the wrong place. There you go. Sorry, is I'm going to take, before I take off the logo there. So I showed you how I do the animations of the of quick stings. What we're also able to do, take that banner off, go back into the brand, we can actually play videos through, and I'm just going to flip and play a video, and then you'll see how the video goes, transitions over the top and plays.
So what we're seeing here is basically this is truly a virtual video mixer.
Yeah. And as you say, your question was, is it a virtual video mixer? You're absolutely seeing a virtual video mixer, and you're able to use the transitions. So if I go and put in a transition like this, and I take out Edwin, put in Brian in his place, we should, I've got to turn Brian's got muting. You can see I've transitioned really quickly to another 3 up display of people. Okay. Last thing I will show you before is that we get, as I said, the comments come in from social media. So these are the comments that which people are showing, and they're putting them in there. Some of these are putting them in. It looks like they're all coming in from YouTube, but they could have been in Facebook as well. And that's how it works.
So it's kind of an all-in-one on-screen environment for not only presenting people and running a show for all intents and purposes, but it also has a lot of plugins that bring other content in to enhance the show. Is that kind of an overview of what Streamyard tries to be?
Yeah, I think what Streamyard is it started from a production platform versus Zoom, which started as a meeting platform. And the ability is for it to bring in parts of this and to deliver in an order, automated, simple. Their three key things are always: it's simple to use, professional looking streams, and I can't remember what the other one is. It will come to me in a minute. I'm probably sure that Beauty Bubble is about to shout at me for not forgetting. But Leland, you'll have to unmute in Zoom.
Yeah, and I just wanted to touch on one thing that a lot of people tend to forget about StreamYard is that you can still even enhance it further with the capabilities of vMix or I can't think of the Apple version right now for some reason. And any of those that have virtual cameras, you can bring those virtual cameras into StreamYard like I just did and still be able to maintain other graphics features like lower third capabilities inside vMix or graphics capabilities or video playback capabilities as well. So it over enhances what's already there.
And you'll see I've changed to a set 2-up background, which actually even adds edges around the two people. So it makes it look quite nice. And you can change all the backgrounds just to all the things that you'd like to do.
Okay, so that's a great overview of the first platform from StreamYard. Jeffrey, you want to take over and do a little bit on the alternative, and then we'll open for questions right after that.
Absolutely. So it's a lot of things that StreamYard does, Restream does, and I'm not going to regurgitate all of that, but I will tell you that you can schedule to go live on Restream. You can go up to 30 platforms on the Restream. You can create all the animated backgrounds. They just added royalty-free stuff, including lower thirds and music and stuff like that. So let's go over to the screen really quick. And I actually have this running. You can go over to my Twitch channel, and I put the Twitch channel in Makana if you want to see that going live. Right now we have a blank screen, and I have looks like Aaron just joined on here, so it's easy for the people to come on. You just have to invite them on the guest right there. Same controls on the bottom, same idea of switching between different types of scenes right here. So I'm going to bring in a couple things here. First of all, I'm going to bring in my camera, which is my PTZ camera, which is right behind me, pointed to Wirecast, which is going out to the show here. So it brings in an NDI source really easy. You just need to go and download the NDI tools to choose which source you want to, and it's only a single source. And then, of course, you can add in, I have another one here that is my overhead camera, and we'll switch this over just like Leo did with StreamYard. This is actually right above my head right here, and this is going to my computer, a small Nook, which is then being streamed via a RTMP signal. So this computer doesn't even need to be at my house. I could have it over at Leo's house or Bill's house or anything like that. I give them the RTMP credentials. All they have to do is go in and put the RTMP credentials into OBS or Wirecast or vMix or Ecamm, whatever, and be able to work from there. Yeah, Aaron, we got the private chat too. So I'll be able to go from there. So the next one, of course, we have video. So I brought in a video of me. I think I was reviewing the Zenfone 7. So I can bring this in, and the cool thing about this is you can bring in individual videos, or once again with the RTMP, you can bring in video feed from a different computer and then just run it like that. And then of course we'll bring in Aaron, we'll bring in Todd here. So all of them going through this, and of course we can change all the different types of switches right here. As you saw with the private chat, if there's any problems, you can definitely talk and say hi and all that other good stuff right there. And then over here we have the ability to see the chat. We'll have the ability to see the captions. So if you want to follow me, you just show that, and there we go. That brings that out, and then of course we hide all that, and then yeah, okay, and then of course all the graphics right there, changing all the graphics. One thing that I don't know if StreamYard does, Leo, you'll have to correct if it does, but we have the chat overlay. So as you can see, all the chats right here. If I hit this button right here, now this chat, when if somebody wants to say something on Twitch, that would be great. It will start to show up on the right panel here, which is a pretty cool feature, because then you can run something a little bit more autonomous and not have to worry about that, and still have the comments flowing on the left side. Like I said, 30 different channels, and Leo and I went through all the channels that you could go through on Restream, and some of them you can't, because, like for instance, LinkedIn, you need permission to do so. But then you've got some channels that are based in China, and there, of course, you need special. I think you need a phone number there, somebody that lives there, to actually give you the permission there. And then, of course, you can go to Russian sites. You can go to, and of course, Wowza and all those other good things. So, we've got a couple comments in the chat. Yes, Frank Ray, we can see you now. And Time Foolery goes, really nice demo. So. The
Cool.
best part about this is, yeah, this is I consider this a web switcher, not a software switcher, not a hardware switcher, but a web switcher. And yeah, you could easily replace your Wirecast, your vMix, your Ecamm with this thing. But of course, they can also complement it. And I use this all the time because I do a 24/7 stream onto all my channels, and it goes through a studio, and it also just goes through. You can just do the regular RTMP in there and totally bypass the studio if you don't need it.
Thanks. Great job from both of you of giving us an overview. Let's follow Alex's plan now and have the questions determine the rest of the conversation. We're starting with something from Laura Thompson, who says, I've seen that that Restream can aggregate the chat from different platforms, YouTube, Facebook, and so forth, into one chat panel, and can StreamYard do the same thing? We're getting some head nods, but Leo?
Yeah, as Jeffrey said, both of them do the same thing. So Restream will do it, but StreamYard does it from Facebook, Twitter using Periscope. It's still using Periscope because nobody knows when that's going to change, and YouTube.
I just realized we've given Jeffrey now yet another job, being a panelist and presenter on top of the three things he was doing before. So I'm going to try to handle most of the question stuff here and let you just stay present as a key player in the discussion.
And LinkedIn, sorry, and LinkedIn.
All right.
Yeah, you have enough to do. Douglas Carmichael's up next and says, many streaming platforms like Twitch ban streaming to more than one platform at a time if you're using their monetization features. Could Restream still be useful if you contractually can't stream to more than one platform? Is this a negative? And does anybody want to talk about monetization on the two platforms and whether there's any difference? Leland has a hand up.
One of the original... Go ahead, Jeff. But
I've never heard of that. And when I stream to all the channels. But of course, yeah, technically, I don't think I'm on Twitch's monetization side of things. So, but YouTube totally monetized if I want to. I choose not to when I do my 24/7 stream, simply because of the fact that I'm trying to get people to come to the channel, not look at ads. And so I've never heard of this.
One of the initial restrictions to streaming to multiple platforms at once was through the APIs. So if you were streaming through Facebook's API, which would be through the front interface and not using an RTMP signal through the back server feature, then they would not allow you by terms of service to broadcast into a YouTube channel. If you're using the RTMP signal to the back end of Facebook, they have no such restriction. You can simply send those RTMP signals wherever you'd like. So it really comes down to which method you're using to stream to the site.
Question comes from Jake Goodnight in Indianapolis. StreamYard or Restream's, does anyone have any experience with Social Live or ShowFlow? If so, how do you do they compare to the other cloud production tools like Restream or StreamYard? Aaron has a hand up on that. Then we'll see if Jeffrey and or Leo want to pinch.
So one thing to note is that a lot of platforms are expanding into this space right now, with StreamYard being sort of one of the original sort of web-based things. Restream has very similar look, feel, obviously, because it's sort of copying off of what StreamYard is doing. But Restream did restreaming before it did any of this studio stuff, right? And ShowFlow did show rundowns and stuff way before that. I've used ShowFlow for shows before, just as a rundown, calculator, basically. But everybody seems to be adding a lot of these switcher features. There's a bunch of other ones as well. That we're not even talking about today. So yeah, they're all going to likely have the same feature set more or less. And then at some point there will be a consolidation, and then there will be new features, and then, the normal cycle of all of this.
Jeffrey, when you were doing your comparison and going through all the other ones, what did you see? And let's start with Jeffrey and then go to Leo.
The other comparisons, one reason why I originally didn't go to StreamYard it was because of the fact that StreamYard had a data cap on things. So I think it was like 50 hours at the time. I don't know if that's changed or not, but that was because I was trying to do a 24/7 thing, going to multiple channels. The 50 hours would have been eaten up within only a few hours. So that wasn't an option for me. The other ones, they all have great. They're all for the different types of niches, so that fit in there. The one that I know Leland's also been working with is HAPS, which is absolutely free. But then, of course, if you can't find the product, then chances are you're the product. And there were a lot of things that I didn't care for too much, like, for instance, the inability to control how the lower thirds worked. And so that's why I'm not too much on HAPS, but it's a great free service for anybody that doesn't want to pay for anything. You got to keep in mind, Restream and StreamYard both have freemium models, but they're looking for a paid audience for doing stuff what we're doing right now.
Leo, weigh in.
I think Jeffrey sums it up. There's lots of reasons for each one has a different area that they do some better or worse or whatever you want to say. But StreamYard started with this. This is what they started with. Restream started as a cross-platform delivery tool, and the two have met halfway in the middle somewhere. But I would say that when StreamYard came out and it started, it literally was the only one doing this in a really good and clean way. The data caps, the free version has a data cap, the paid versions don't, and it's just a difficult question of is this one better than the other? And I think the point is, I think Jeffrey summed it up very well, that these are an alternative to hardware or software switches. These are moving their way. Because a good example of this, and a great example of this, is if I cut my internet connection now, the show still continues. Now it sort of runs headless, as in, it's sort of like nobody's in control of it, but it will continue with what's on the screen until every single person drops off. But if they continue talking, it will run, and then you can pick it up and start producing from somewhere else, which is a great feature for particularly when you're bringing in people. And also bear in mind, when you're bringing in people locally, you're having to deal with all of that traffic to you. This is dealing with, as with Zoom, this is dealing with all this traffic going from their connection to the relevant point of presence.
Jeffrey, you might want to make a quick comment before we get to the next question.
Yeah, and there is one other factor, and this actually happened in my first live stream studio Restream thing. I was hosting a four-person conversation, and Restream records everything, which is great because then you could download after the fact and watch it, put on your socials, edit, and things like that. But what I found was at that time I was having some internet issues, and what turned out to be really great and the other people looked awesome, I looked like junk. I was all pixelated, I was behind, and I couldn't control that. And that's the one thing that I have a small problem with, because out of everything, if I'm hosting the show, I need to be the most pristine picture there. And then however they come in, that's their issue. But I need to be most pristine, and I wasn't able to control that. So that's something to keep in mind when you're using a web switcher like this.
I think that's a fair point. And I wonder if people are going to start doing direct to their own desktop, not meaning the computer desktop, but just a recorder off to make sure they get themselves clean, if nothing else. Interesting idea. All right, moving on to Jacob Goodnight's question next from Indianapolis. Streamyard, when using a cloud production tool, how do you best handle hybrid events with a mix of remote virtual presenters and in-person presenters? How do you provide a return feed, for example, to in-person guests? Anybody want to deal with how these services do that, or do they do it? And if not, that would seem to be a flaw. Jeffrey?
Well, it's actually really simple. They see what you see. So when Leland comes in, when Todd's in on mine, he sees the screen that I see. And if I'm using, hardware or software switchers, I always like to push the production feed back to the person, because they might be a little bit delayed, but they're always seeing what's on screen. Because as we see in this production, it's always important to see where the camera is pointed. So if we need to sneeze or scratch our ears or whatnot, we don't do it when we're spotlighted on the camera.
Does it handle things like mix minuses for audio gracefully? Does it do that?
Yeah, well, yeah, it has echo, just like with a Zoom. It has the echo cancellation, all the other features. At least Restream does. Has all those extra features and a lot more. But for the most part, as I'm talking to you, as long as I have headphones on, then I'm not going to get any echoes back. But if somebody's listening with open speakers, that could be a pretty good nightmare.
Leo, I'm sorry, Leland. Not Leo.
I just thought maybe it would help all those out there who can't see the other side where we're at. I'm inside Streamyard using Firefox as a separate browser, but I'm also sharing the same camera that I'm using here inside Zoom by using vMix's virtual camera. This is what I see on my end. If you'd like to pin my screen for a moment, you're going to see the deep effect of the return video loop back of my own video, of course. But this is the interface I log into with the short link. So I see myself in the lower left corner. It tells me whether or not I'm live on the show in the display, so that at least gives me a warning and a heads up that, hey, you're on camera, you better pay attention. And then I simply have access to the 4 simple features of stopping my cam, changing my cam and mic, or doing a screen share just like you do in Zoom. The chat features over to the side, along with any comments that might have been made by the viewers, so that we can follow along and see those comments before they're placed on the screen. I just thought that might help everyone a little bit.
And if the young lady in that is your girlfriend, I'm recommending gloves as a Christmas present, just saying. All right, moving on. Daniel Goldstein in Washington, D.C. says, can we see what the interface is like for a guest for both services? So, well, I think we saw a little of those, but Leo, do you want to start and pop up what they would see?
I think Leland has just demonstrated it. That's what the guest says.
Okay. All right, so we'll move on to Daniel Goldstein's question next. And he says, what protocols do the two services use to bring in guests? What are the pros and cons versus Zoom, which for all of its limitations is rock solid at fighting to keep some connection no matter how poor the network quality? So stability. You want to start, Jeffrey, and we'll go to Leo after that?
Stability on this versus Zoom. Well, I believe that Restream is hosted by AWS, so it's basically wherever they can put replicants to that. And I know you can hook up via RTMP to their Chicago branch, their Austin branch. They're based in Austin, Texas, by the way. Streamyard's based in, I think, Germany. You'll have to correct me if Leo on that one. I'm not 100%, but it's in Europe somewhere. Yeah, so they have places that you can replicate your stream to. I've used this while I was in South Korea, and I was doing live streams from South Korea, and I just used the South Korea node, and I was out to my YouTube and my Twitch and all my other channels.
Leo, you want to weigh in?
So I mentioned before, Beauty Bubbles put it up here, the 3 pillars of StreamYard are ease of use, stability, and professional looking streams. In the 2 years that I've been using StreamYard, and it is now coming on 2 years, I used it before the lockdown, it has dropped on me once, and that was an issue that they had, and I got an email of the art straight afterwards. It's all cloud-based. So to come back to the question, it's using WebRTC. I'm pretty sure that's the same for Restream as well, for that element of it. The big difference, actually, and Jeffrey did mention it earlier, Restream has an ability for you to put an RTMP input into it, which StreamYard does not.
Yet.
Liberty, go ahead.
And just to add on that, it's also important to note that your guests would most likely you'd want them on a hardwired connection versus mobile. We did a series last year where those that came in on their Wi-Fi, and I know that's standard industry, but what I've seen on StreamYard is like it just does not work as well, and it just really depends on their data. So just on the stability side of things, if people are on a poor network, don't come in on a mobile device.
Yeah, I think that's one of the office hours golden rules. The first thing we ask people if we're having trouble is, are you on Wi-Fi? And we get them off onto a direct wired connection as soon as possible. Leland, you had a comment before we move to Daniel Goldstein's question?
Yeah, just to touch on all of these WebRTC platforms as a whole in general, I've been reviewing these sites since probably 2015 or 2016 as they come out, and there's several more like them as well. Some came before, some came after. The one thing to keep in mind is these are constantly evolving. They're just now getting to the 1080p range of production. They're just now getting to video playback, just now getting to recordings for VOD. So these things are constantly growing, and you need to look at it as such that those features might not necessarily work fresh out of the box the first few months that these features are added to these platforms. So use them, test them, and make sure prior to going into production that you run through them several times to make sure that your workflow is going to do what it's going to do.
Okay, we're down to about 20 minutes left of the show, and we still got 13 questions, so we're going to increase the pace here a little bit. Going to start zipping through things. Daniel Goldstein in Washington, D.C. is back again with, do either tool have comment moderation tools? I want a human being whose judgment I trust to approve each comment before it gets pushed to the program. So comment management, Jeffrey?
On Restream, yes. And once again, I showed you 2 different ways. One is kind of the autonomous way, and the other one is when the comments come in, what you can do, I'll do it really quick. So I have a comment over here, let's say from Digifiddler, I bring it in, and of course it brings it in as a lower third rather than on the side. And there's Todd. Say hi, Todd.
All right, let's keep moving because we've got a lot of ground to cover here. Unless Leo has a hand up, I'm going to pop over to, you do. Okay, you want to say something about the other service?
As you can see, that I can actually, from inside of StreamYard, I can actually, on an individual thing, put a user in a timeout, block a user, block comments, push them out. Same on that one is a you can do that on the comments that come through, so you can stop the flooding, although it's a nightmare with Twitter.
So I'm just mentally confused because we're reading comments in a comment system that is part of the comment system that's not our comment system. I run into this all the time. Where did that ping come from? Which of my 42 services? Jeffrey, real quick, and then we're going to move on.
One last thing on this is, yeah, it will go to Twitch, it will go to YouTube and the other socials, but there's times where some socials will not connect up to the comment system. You might miss out some comments. So it's always a good idea to keep an eye on the other pages every now and then.
All right, Daniel Goldstein's back again with another comment here. This time, how much access does a client need to give a Streamyard or Restream operator to their YouTube and Facebook accounts in order to use all the features, including comment aggregation? Anybody? Liberty has a hand up. Go Liberty.
Yeah, they need access as like page owner access, so that getting in and passwords, because I know for StreamYard that they'll actually ask as well that you need to give the ability for people to actually like comment. So there's just one extra layer of authorization that has to happen. So typical page management access.
Leo.
Yeah, if you want to be able to bring in the comments back in, you need that. If you don't want to bring in the comments, if all you want to do is fire it out, you just need to they need to give you the RTMP keys as you would do with any other third-party thing like OBS. But for the power of what you want to do, so I did a live event of a school awards event today with the parents and grandparents all around the world. The reason it was so successful is that the parents and grandparents can see their comments on the screen, and when they start doing that, you just get literally flooded by the fact they realize they can actually comment and it's on there, and the gates open and it's hundreds of them.
Okay, let's move on to Douglas Carmichael's next question. Considering that StreamYard uses the browser and browsers are typically doing multiple things at once, would you be concerned about reliability for critical events versus a dedicated application? Who wants to handle that? Anybody have concerns? Leo, go ahead.
I think it comes back to everything to do with remote production, and it's the same with anything. You can say it's the browser, you can say it's something else. I don't have any more concerns over this, although I think Liberty touched on a very, very important point. Both Restream and StreamYard won't drop down to the really super low levels that Zoom will. So if you're really, really concerned and you have people in really bad conditions, it's better to be using Zoom.
Leland, quick comment.
The only thing with these WebRTC platforms running browser-based as they are is to watch how many tabs you have open, see exactly what resources you're using in Google, because Google Chrome does open a lot of additional resources. I tend to find Firefox works a little better on these sites. Hate to say it, but it's true, even though they've been mostly coded toward Google Chrome. You have a little better selection set available to you when it comes to the mics and the cameras in Firefox than you do on Chrome. It's just a coding glitch that's always been there since like version 50. So just keep those things in mind. And also with the comments as well, you could always use vMix's vMix social capabilities to attach to those same videos if the comments that you want to see from other sources aren't available on those platforms.
Beju, you want to weigh in quickly?
Yeah, we have found sometimes that if we need to use Chromium-based support, we often just have them install a separate browser like Brave or Edge, which uses Chromium. So it supports the standard Chrome and not use the standard Chrome install, because we often have a lot of plugins installed. The new browser doesn't have anything extra in it, and they just use it for one thing. It often works better.
Roscoe Jones has our next question. Are there audio meters to calibrate guest loudness? A la our famous office hours mic check. Leo, go ahead.
Audio meters, but if I take, for example, actually, Leland, can you open your? I'm just going to unmute you, Leland. Although don't talk, or we'll have a double. I can then go into the mic settings, and I can turn his echo cancellation on or off, and I can actually adjust his microphone volume on there. So I have got some controls over what I can actually do for the remote guest. But they also have a third option which I can't control, which is they can turn stereo on and off. I can't do that from here. On their side, what's also quite useful is they get to see which microphone they're on and change it. But it would be really great if we could actually control that. While I'm on there very quickly, they also have, if I do it to show you just related, and I do my own camera, this is actually badly worded in my view. It says a camera resolution. It should actually say top resolution, because if you set it down to something like 720 and they haven't got it, it won't go to it. But it basically is a ceiling. They should change the wording of it, but you can actually do that and change that.
Moving on, Tony Mobley from Newman, Georgia, our friend, says, please share the cost of both applications. What does it take to get into these guys? who wants to deal with the cost? Leo, Jeffrey, what does it take to get into?
It's, well, like I said, there's a freemium model, but I haven't, I don't know exactly, because they're, a lot of times they'll have like Black Friday sales and stuff like that. And I know when the Black Friday sales came, a lot of us snagged that up because they were getting like a 25 to 30% discount. But it really depends on what you're planning to use it for. If it's just going to be one-on-one interviews, and by the way, this is a great way for you to do like a private one-on-one interview. You don't even need to go to any of the socials. You can do a private one-on-one interview, record their video, and then bring it back in for post-production. And on Restream, you can go up to 1080, 30 frames a second, or 720, 60 frames a second, and use it that way. But I think the lower end is something around $200 to $300.
So retail price $200 to $300 generally. And what about live stream?
Streamyard. Leland, if you can put the price back up, and you had it up on your screen about 10 seconds ago, and I just went to, and now you've taken it down.
That's all right. I was getting the other one for Restream as well. Typically, these sites run like $20, $25 a month on the norm. And then if you want the bonus features for the business add-ons for graphics and stuff, they go up to $49. Then you get into enterprise models that are usually $99 and up. Some go as high as hundreds of dollars a month, depending on the type of service and support you're going to get from the team. But both of those you can find at streamyard.com/pricing or restream.io/pricing should get you to the right place.
And Liberty wanted to comment. Go ahead, Liberty.
Oh, I was just putting up essentially what Leland he gave the price wise, but there's just a comparison for everyone to look at. And of course, it makes a difference if you go annually. So if you do it on a yearly basis, then you've got a little bit of a cost savings there.
Go Live 25 will get you 25% off Restream right now. As a matter of fact, it just popped up on the screen.
It's on sale. Let's move on to Andrew Lipnick. This question from San Francisco: does either platform have an automatic speaker view or the like? So a video follows audio. Is that what I guess that's probably what he's talking about, like Zoom does. I'm seeing negative head shakes. I'm not seeing any hands, but everybody's saying
no on Restream, at least not yet.
Leo's up. We got a hand.
It has been asked a number of times, and the answer, so the guys behind StreamYard have a town hall every single Sunday where they will answer questions directly. That's the two founders. This question comes up a lot, and their view is that it's very difficult because you could end up following the wrong person. This is a production environment, and it's designed so that somebody is actually producing. That's where the big difference is. And what you end up doing, as you can see by the screen that I have, where I've got Leland in there, I would actually just flick him, flick to myself, flick to Liberty, flick to Edwin, and just go straight back into the big screen. It's control. And if anybody who has ever produced in Zoom knows, and Jesse is the man today, it's hard work when the system doesn't do what you think it's going to do, or it does something that you weren't planning and it just seems to jump around. It's much easier in a production environment if you actually produce rather than expect it to produce, and you know it's going to do what you want.
So the answer is essentially no by design. Tony Mobley in Newman, Georgia is up next. He said, would anybody recommend one over the other for small congregation worship services? Anybody do that here? And anybody have a recommendation? I'm seeing now, I think we're getting, there are lots of programs and solutions for doing live broadcast of those things that are out there. I mean, that's a big industry. So maybe not this, or maybe this. Leland, you want to really quickly do it, and then we're going to zip through the next 10.
It really comes down to use and workflow. I would recommend, because there are normally free trials on all of these types of systems, just go sign up, get an account, try it out, see what you think. And if you don't like that one, or fire them both up at the same time and get a feel for how they function and find the one that fits you best.
Okay, one or two people real quick. Ed Rubin says, can there be multiple hosts or co-hosts of any of these services? And is there a green room type capability for presenters who are not on screen? Leo, go.
Okay, so multiple co-hosts, yes, in StreamYard. It is a little bit difficult at the moment. What you have to do is you have to get people to log in with or they put in your email address, and then you give them the 6-digit code that will come to your email. They are changing it. There's a new version of StreamYard coming out. I think they're calling it Teams off the top of my head, which will enable you to give people different access. But typically I run an event with 3 producers, always with 3.
That's not going to cause any confusion.
Yeah, I know. I run it with 3 producers. So we typically will have one person doing the camera switching, one person to run the videos, and one person to do the comments, because when you're running really fast and there's a lot of comments coming up, it makes sense. And we can do some really slick production that way. And all of those people, as you can see at the moment on here, at the moment, I've got 2, 4, 6, 8 windows underneath. I can have up to 15 of these little tiles at the bottom, of which that's the sort of the green room effect. It is a thing that a lot of us who use StreamYard a lot would say I really would like a separate green room. So I normally create my own one. Also, before I disappear off this, those who are watching on both Facebook and YouTube on my thing, please put in the hashtag OH, because I'm going to use the draw feature on StreamYard at the end of this.
Todd, real quick.
I was just going to say that the as Jeffrey's main guinea pig here, I was put straight into a green room, and I'm really used to green rooms in Ecamm Live too, which also has an bring-in feature, and they're quite common. I'm surprised that StreamYard doesn't have that, Leo. Is that what you said? But absolutely, Restream. I was hanging out in a green room, and still could be if I were put back.
I'm not going to put you back, Todd.
I'm sorry. I'm going to go into speed round now because we've got 11 questions in 10 minutes. And so Ed Rubin in Oakland, what does the other presenter see in StreamYard? Is it user-friendly for non-tech folk? Who wants to really quickly just make a statement? Jeffrey, you want to just say, is it user-friendly?
I think it's pretty user-friendly. It's very nice and everything in one screen. That's the most important thing.
Okay,
tabs and
good.
Everything. Yeah.
Jesse in Los Angeles has a question. How does the internet latency affect switching? How bad is it compared to a hardware switcher on site? Leo, you want to quickly address that?
There isn't really. I haven't got a problem with the latency of it, but also I think you get used to working on the speed that you work at. And again, I'll come back to the whole point of doing this in comparison to, and it is the comparison to Zoom. You are so much more in control than when you're trying to switch a show in Zoom. If you're trying to switch directly in Zoom, which I always refer to as it's like holding the wrong end of a snake. When you're trying to switch in Zoom, it's just a completely different environment.
Okay, moving to Aaron Husledge in Durham, North Carolina, and he asked, is StreamYard still limited to 720p for participants? That should be a quick yes or no. Liberty.
1080p on the Pro.
Liberty nods. So there we go. That takes care of it. Douglas Carmichael says, would StreamYard or Restream support alerts based on specific features of each streaming platform? For example, triggering sounds or graphics upon a subscription or a tip to one's channel. Can we ring the bells if somebody gives you money? Is that really the ask? Leland.
I will say that some of the producers out there have incorporated bots within their productions, especially on Facebook. So there are ways that those interactions could take place if they were developed and built out properly. But I would get with the people that build those bots, and I could point you to some people if that's something you're interested in doing.
Jeffrey, real quick.
Yeah, I think you'd need some sort of third party for that. And then, of course, that would be for the specific screen, as opposed to the overall screen. So if you have like a multi-box like I have right now, if the lower third one on Todd, it might cut off if you saw it this way.
Okay. Moving on, Aaron Houseledge of Durham, North Carolina says, happy birthday, Bill. No, do not do that to me. I specifically didn't want to get into that because my wife has already, oops, wait a second, I need to cut to that, put all sorts of balloons around me, and I took them off camera because we have no time to mess with that stuff. I'm zipping along to.
And you muted.
Oh, let's sing it while he's off.
But
right, that's what I was thinking. That's exactly what I was
Happy
thinking.
birthday to you. Happy birthday to you, dear Bill. Happy birthday, dear Bill.
Happy birthday to you.
I missed the glorious train wreck that is our happy birthday. So thank you. Let's move on. We're going to Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas. Which platform has the most sustainable business model and which might be the most ripe for future investment or acquisition? Leo, go ahead quickly.
Well, Streamyard has already been bought. I think it was 150 million off the top of my head by Hopin. And they're going on they're on a train of hoovering everything they can lay their hands on. Restream, as far as I'm aware, hasn't up to this. And actually, I think Restream, actually, going back to a question that Jeffrey asked earlier, Restream is based in Europe. Streamyard is based in California.
Leland?
And I'll ask a question at the same time, but I have to say StreamYard, because not only did Hopin purchase that site as part of their network build, LinkedIn just dropped about $2 billion onto that entire HAPS system build out as well. StreamYard is one of the, now I have to ask Jeffrey, can you stream to LinkedIn with Restream? Because that is one feature StreamYard has a shoe in really with LinkedIn that I believe Restream does not.
Actually, yeah, with Restream, and here's the little secret: if you really want to get a LinkedIn channel and get it now,
that's right,
you can go to their support, and then probably with Streamyard the same way. You can get to their support and say, "Hey, can you? Here's my code or the email that they sent me. Can you make this happen?" And most likely they will if it's the right channel.
Edwin Ruiz in Chicago. How do both platforms, pull from chats or comments from destinations like Facebook and YouTube? What's the plumbing system I think they're looking for? Is anybody, Leo, go ahead.
APIs of the platforms to do it. But there are some restrictions that you have to be aware of. So a good example is that if you try and go live to a group in Facebook, you have to have every single person has to actually approve for their name to appear on there. This has been a long-standing situation, and it's just it's tightening up slowly on there. But they use the API. You can, and that's why I said earlier, you can get around that if you really want to and go RTMP, but you end up with none of the information back. And what you also see in both my screen, and you'll see it in, if I put it on my screen, and you'll see it in Jeffrey's top left hand corner, just below my face, I've got the number count of the people, and I get the likes, and everything will start appearing, so I can actually see those actually natively inside of the platform.
Fair enough. Douglas Carmichael has our next question. An example of monetization features I referred to as Twitch's affiliate tier, section 2.2 of the affiliate agreement, and he's got it linked there, gives Twitch 24-hour exclusivity. Would Restream or these things be a terms of service ban risk? Anyone want to deal with who knows more about the contractual sides of these things? I'm not seeing any hands, so it looks like oh dear, that means somebody's going to have to actually read those 34 pages of mice type that determine your contractual relationship with these services. I would not wish that on my worst enemy. Jeffrey, you want to make a comment real quick?
Yeah, not for me, because that's not what my brand is about. So it'd be nice to be on their affiliate, but if there's a price that I can't go anywhere else, I'm probably just gonna not do it, because that would just limit me immensely. Because one of the other channel I go to is my Amazon Live, and that's so I can stream to all of them plus Amazon Live, and of course that's straight up affiliate right there.
Okay, Douglas Carmichael has our fourth to the last. We got 3 minutes. Would either platform provide the ability to use mobile devices as camera sources or controllers? Very quickly, anybody want to just say yes or no or something? Leo, real quick.
Yes, yeah, you can do everything mobile, but if you're going to really do it and you really want to produce, I wouldn't produce on mobile.
Okay, Craig McFarland in Boston, has anyone figured out an instant replay solution for live events to replay something that happened 3 to 5 minutes ago? So some kind of growing file thing that you could restream back in there. Leland, real quick.
My best option for that is vMix, because they actually have a complete replay system built within the platform. So if you're looking to do replays, just get the software, try it out. You can get the free version for 60 days and see what you think.
Great. Chris Widener, our second to the last questioner, can either tool playback segments of online videos from YouTube or Vimeo as a part of the production? So can you put it in and out on and play back just a segment? Liberty.
Yes, you can. I think both of them showed some samples of that, but just put the URL in and share screen as an option if you want to. So the answer is yes.
Excellent. And Leland, real quick.
I have to, because this has been a feature that's been requested on these sites time and time and time again, over and over, and many tend to forget. All you got to do is run your virtual camera from your streaming software inside that window, and you can play back video. You don't need to have a separate feature available to do so. It's always a request feature for the simple to just drop a link from YouTube or what have you to do a playback, or upload a video to the system to play it back. It's never been a necessity per se, but it is something that's a little easier feature set to use, that's all.
And the final. Whoops, I managed to mute myself. Alex 40 Goldner from London says, which runs better with AWS Infinidash authentication? Has anybody had any problems or success in that? And I'm seeing a lot of blank looks here. I know people. Jesse Schwartz, real quick.
I don't know the answer, but I'm wondering, why did this get -7 votes? It feels like a serious question. I feel like I'm missing something.
Maybe it's just only niche enough that, I don't know, or maybe somebody didn't like Alex this morning. You can't do that. Alex is great. And Douglas Carmichael has the last one, and we'll get the last one in, and then I get to close off the show. Douglas Carmichael, would Streamyard Restream be useful for private streams to a small group where you want to control access to the stream with an ID or password? So is passwording possible? Leo, go ahead.
It's not possible, and I'm going to just press the go on the draw, because otherwise we're going to lose out on the time. So we're going to see who's going to win the draw, and you should be seeing that coming up on your screen now. It's part of the StreamYard there. So the winner is going to be Chris W. There you go.
Chris, congratulations.
It's a feature of StreamYard.
We've made it to the end. Thank you, everybody, for a great show. Jeffrey, did you have one last little comment before we say goodbye?
I was going to say on the privacy, yeah, if you send it out to YouTube or Vimeo or anything like that, it does have privacy features. Yeah, you can set it up as for that. So definitely.
Okay, we're saying goodbye. And I found out yesterday by talking to Jesse that Jesse can actually determine the end of the show. So we are saying goodbye to you all. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. Thank you all for listening. See you tomorrow.